At 9:27 in the morning, air traffic control in southern France received routine contact from a passenger aircraft traveling from Spain to Germany. It was a short flight, clear skies. Nothing unusual. The aircraft was flying normally at cruising altitude. The captain calmly acknowledged the controller's instructions. Then, within minutes, something changed. The aircraft's altitude began to drop slowly at first, not suddenly, not violently. Just enough to raise concern. Air traffic controllers tried calling the cockpit. There was no response. They tried again. And again. Different frequencies. Another aircraft nearby. Still nothing. The plane continued descending. At 9:40, radar contact was lost. 1 minute later, the aircraft struck a mountainside in the Alps. No one survived. The crash site was remote and silent. Rescue teams could only reach it by helicopter. What they found left little doubt. The aircraft had not broken apart in the air. It had been flown into the mountain. When investigators recovered the recorders and reconstructed the data, a disturbing pattern emerged. This was not a mechanical failure. This was not weather. This was human action. To understand what happened, investigators went back to the cockpit timeline. After the aircraft reached cruising altitude, the captain briefly left the cockpit. While he was gone, the aircraft's flight controls were adjusted. The descent was set. When the captain returned moments later, he attempted to re-enter the cockpit. The door did not open. He tried again. Nothing. Modern cockpit doors are designed to stay sealed during emergencies. They can only be opened from the inside or overridden by those already inside. The captain used the emergency entry system. It was overridden. From that moment on, the cockpit was locked permanently. The cockpit voice recorder later captured the sound of repeated attempts to regain access, but the door held. Inside the cockpit, the aircraft continued its steady descent. There were no sudden movements, no evasive maneuvers. The speed remained controlled. The direction remained unchanged. Investigators identified the person in control. A trained aviator. Experienced. Quiet. Someone who had dreamed of flying since childhood. Someone who had also struggled privately. Records showed a long history of medical concerns. Periods of deep emotional distress. Time spent under medical care. At different points, he had been declared unfit to fly, but those records never reached the airline. He continued working. He continued flying. Days before the flight, he searched for information about cockpit security systems. On a previous flight, he briefly tested descent controls while alone in the cockpit. On the return flight, he acted. As the aircraft descended, air traffic control tried desperately to make contact. Inside the cabin, passengers and crew had no warning, only the growing realization that something was wrong. The aircraft remained stable until the final moment. 10, 8, and death. Among those lost were families, crew members, and a school group returning home. The captain's final actions were attempts to stop what he could not reach. The co-pilot remained silent until the end. In the aftermath, aviation authorities across Europe changed procedures. New screening measures were introduced. Cockpit occupancy rules were revised. Policies were rewritten. But none of it could undo what had already happened. This case remains one of the most chilling in aviation history. Not because of chaos, but because of control. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moment is not when something breaks, but when someone decides not to stop.